Flights are pricey, planning feels chaotic, and that family trip keeps getting pushed. I hear it every day from business owners and busy professionals, and I felt it too. I'm Ross, the founder of Itinerary Boss and your host. After 10 plus years of planning work and personal trips to over 20 countries, I became the guy who found the deals and turned points into upgrades. This show helps you turn everyday business and personal spend into points and miles for premium travel. Each week, you'll get step by step tactics and short episodes, plus expert guests with specific use cases tied to your most asked questions for travel plans that'll help support your business, goals, and your life. Go ahead and grab the free Points and Miles cheat sheet in the show notes to speed up your learning. And now, on with the show. Welcome back to another episode of World Travel Made Easy. I'm your host, Ross Alcorn. On this week's episode, I'm excited to have Spencer Johnson. He has a big YouTube channel, and he's going to teach us today how we can start to build credit card stacks into travel, leveraging your everyday spend. And he does a phenomenal job on breaking down what most people get overwhelmed with complex strategies to then show how do we make this simple and get max value out of those. So if you've ever wondered what cards to start with, how to optimize your spend, or how professionals like Spencer do it, you're going to want to stick around. He also has a awesome tool that he just launched. So if you stick around till the end, he's going to show you exactly what that can do for you today. Hey, Spencer, what's going on, man?
Hey Ross, thank you for having me. I'm excited for this. Been looking forward to it for a while, but yeah, I'm excited to talk to your audience today and hopefully help them learn something, you know?
Oh yeah, I know from our conversations, I've learned a ton from you just on YouTube, as well as just how you got started into it. I think it was pretty cool that we got connected through
Yeah.
a mutual friend in the Charlotte Entrepreneur Group who
hmm
you went to high school with, and he said you got to check out Spencer's YouTube. Checked it out, and was like, oh man, I got to get this guy on the podcast. Just good to connect with someone else in the industry.
I know, yeah, I didn't expect it to work out that well with that. Just it's like a cold outreach kind of thing, like for both of us, and it's just like perfect, literally same exact industry and everything. So this should be a good time.
Yeah, man. Yeah, thanks again for joining us. Well, for the listeners,
Mhm.
before we dive in, right? Don't want to sell you short. Like, how did you get into this? Because no one goes to college to get their degree in, right, credit card stacking and
Yeah.
everything. So, what got you started in this space?
Yeah, so I went to school at the University of Texas for civil engineering, actually. So completely different path. Around the time that I was, it was kind of COVID year, junior year, kind of senior year, that time frame, I was really becoming interested in personal finance in general. And I also have always loved YouTube. Like that's kind of my form of entertainment that I've always watched, as well as, education, just constantly on YouTube. So I kind of fell in love with the personal finance and the YouTube stuff at the exact same time. And I learned through that process of falling in love with YouTube that the best way to maybe grow a channel would be to kind of niche down pretty heavily. And that's exactly what I did in the personal finance space with the credit card stuff. I hadn't seen anybody in that niche, I guess, document their journey from the very beginning of that process. And that's where I was at. So I figured, I might as well share my perspective on this stuff. And I never really set out to be like, necessarily always preaching the exact perfect information for everybody, but I knew that if I just documented my journey and what I believe, like that's you can't really take that away from me. And that's what I've done for the past man, I think going on 4 years now. Been doing it three full time going on 3 years. And yeah, I mean I'm just really blessed and fortunate to be able to do this as my full-time job now, outside of the engineering world. Like I said, very different, but here we are.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always funny just to hear what people get their degrees in, and then how they earn how they end up
Yeah.
on this path. Like I got a useless, expensive piece of paper from sports
Yeah.
administration that obviously is being put to good use currently. But
Right.
it's always interesting and very cool to hear. Right, you kind of started documenting your journey. I think it's funny when you get into starting your own business channel, whatever that may be. Everyone's always like, "Hey, document your journey." People want to see
hmm
right when you're getting started out. And kudos to you for doing that. That's something I wish I did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I had if the phones and right, I think
Right.
we're just getting to the iPhone 5C maybe and flip phones, but I wish I did that a little bit better. So that's awesome. And it's paying dividends. I mean, if people go look at your YouTube channel, I mean, it's awesome. So no,
Yeah.
that is awesome, man.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I couldn't imagine being here to be honest, but yeah, like I said, feel very blessed. So
Yeah,
yeah.
man. Well, cool. Well, yeah, I mean, speaking of your YouTube channel, right? You
Mhm.
review dozens of travel credit cards. You're
Right.
doing videos all the time It's very overwhelming for people, right? If you're not
Mhm.
really in this, it seems like you're trying to go get an engineering degree. So, what do
Right.
you feel like a simple starter card is just for someone that's getting out when they're beginning?
Yeah, so from like the very, very beginning of their journey, if they literally haven't gotten any credit cards in the beginning, I usually just recommend that somebody like you just get started with a no annual fee card from whatever bank you really can at that point, right? Just to start building that credit history. Um, that's kind of the most important thing. Usually I recommend people keep that first card for 6 to 12 months before they move to another one. You need to build that score in the first place. You can maybe expedite that by being an authorized user on a card from somebody that you really trust, like a parent or a friend or whoever it is, that can help build your credit history for you by just you assuming that as an authorized user. That's kind of like the quick spiel, I guess, on just the very beginning of your journey. But when it comes to actually, maybe being a little bit more established already as somebody a bit older, and you're looking to get into the travel side of things.
Hey, I wanted to take a quick break to say thank you so much for tuning into the show. The only way the show grows is through listeners like you helping us share it. So if you're enjoying the show, it'd mean the world to me if you hit that 5-star rating, shared it with a friend or family member who's ready to travel more, save money, or just needs a little bit more inspiration and that nudge. And if you're posting about it on Instagram, go ahead and tag Itinerary Boss, and we'll make sure to reshare it and shout you out for giving us a shout out. Thanks so much for the support. It truly means a lot. And now back with the show.
I generally recommend people look at the transferable currency credit cards side of things. And that may sound kind of complicated, I guess, but really all that means is that you're earning or using a card that earns points that can be transferred to different airlines and hotels down the line. Sometimes you're going to get started with a no annual fee card, like I mentioned, like a Chase Freedom Unlimited or something like that that has no annual fee, gives you some base earning rewards, and just that card alone can't make that transfer to these partners. And that's where you see very popular travel cards like the Chase Sapphire Preferred come into play, which is just a $95 annual fee card, has some benefits on it, but the main benefit is that it unlocks access to transfer partners, which are those airline and hotels that we really need access to if we want to play this travel credit card game right. So I would say like the Chase Sapphire Preferred is probably the most well known card that I would recommend for the majority of people, and that's because Chase, I think, as an ecosystem, even though a lot of people online in our space at least, like in the YouTube space, they really hate that I like Chase as much as I do. But I just think that for the common person, I think that they're really good because you have the flexibility of a cashback setup if you want, as well as a travel setup. And the Sapphire Preferred is what takes the cashback setup to the travel side. Citi has their own card in that niche as well. The Citi Strata Premier is one that I like to recommend if somebody needs access to different transfer partners like American Airlines. That's where you would get Citi's cards for that. And then these days, there are plenty of no annual fee cards that also could be travel cards for you. We have like the Wells Fargo Autograph card, which is very, I guess, little talked about online, to be honest, but it's a no annual fee card that gives you the same transfer partner access. The Capital One Venture cards, all of them give you that same access, and they have a no annual fee one. So I think, as complicated as it may sound at the, I guess, front end here, just know that if you're getting a card from a major bank, there's a high likelihood that you're earning in a transferable currency already. And just by optimizing your strategy down the line, you can actually make those points go pretty far.
Yeah, no, 100%. And there's a lot to unpack there, but it's all
Yeah.
very, very good. And a couple of things I want to touch on because these are things that we hear, you and I hear, and everyone in
Hmm.
this space does, right? And we learned getting started. I think it's the first thing is, don't when people are first getting started out, I I like to share this because I personally didn't go get a right massive earning rewards. I got the
Yeah.
Barclay World Mastercard Arrival card that had right zero, $0 annual fee. It didn't have transferable currencies, but I started to learn right the compounding effect of rewards, and built my credit because unfortunately,
Hmm.
you know, in college didn't have a ton, right? I had like a cable bill, right? So had to co-sign on a car when I first came out with my dad. So like I was in that credit building stage,
Yep.
which was great. That was, fast forward 3, 4 years, got the Capital One Venture card, which that was right, had transferable currencies, started to learn there, made the same mistakes everyone does, used it for right a statement credit for the
Hmm.
right the bounce, but right learn some of the features of hey, I'm earning 2x miles. So I think just getting started out is very
Hmm.
important, and then listening to people like Spencer, and if you're listening to this podcast, right, it helps you understand those are some of the mistakes you don't want to make, right? Having
Right.
transferable currencies for hotel for airline partners is going to be key. So no, I really like that you touched on those, and I think it's now that you kind of know that strategy for people, it's going and thinking through, okay, what did Spencer just mention? Where am I at in that journey? And then
Mhm.
that's kind of where you decide. Don't just go all in and go try to get the most expensive one. Cause yes, and get 15 cards in the first year. That's going to overcomplicate it. Start simple,
Right.
start to build up, and learn on the way. I'm curious because you did mention something around the authorized user piece
Hmm.
for parents. Are there strategies? Maybe it happened for you personally, maybe you've seen it elsewhere, but say you want to start building credit for your kid, whether they're in high school, whether they're in college, whether they're just coming out, like have you seen people put into place those strategies to help? So then when not kids, people get out of college, at
Hmm.
22, 23, they're ready to go and maybe get that Chase Sapphire Preferred or, some of the more travel cards that you have to have a little bit of a higher credit limit to get.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that, like I mentioned very briefly, can really expedite your process, right? Like I mentioned, I should maybe cover too that like the for the vast majority of people I talk to in my everyday life, I would say a lot of people start with like the Discover It cashback card, then they'll graduate to like a Chase Freedom Unlimited, Chase Sapphire Preferred, like that kind of trio is very popular among my friends. Even the guy that introduced us, like that's what he started with, and it makes a lot of sense. But you could actually even skip that like Discover card stage since that is kind of like a beginner card, even though it is good, like it can get you some good rewards. You could even skip that and go straight into the transferable currencies that you want by being an authorized user. And what that really means is that let's say that your parent has had a card for 20 years that they have great credit history on, never missed a payment, they have an 800 credit score, all of those kind of things. They can add you as an authorized user to that account and you effectively assume the credit history on that card account on your credit report. So that could jumpstart your journey, have you above a 700 credit score before you even turn 18. You can do this with certain lenders like Amex and I don't know however many others are at this stage, but like at 13 years old, you can get added as an authorized user. And yeah, now you might have a 20-year credit history coming out of college, and that helps you a lot. I didn't have that personally. So I just had to start from scratch, and I did do that full process I kind of outlined. But if you're somebody with that relationship with your parents and are fortunate enough to be able to trust them in that regard, then I would take advantage of it personally.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And no one teaches you that, right? Like when
No,
you're
no.
going through college, the last thing you're thinking about is let me go ask my parents how to become an authorized user, right? You're trying to figure out how do I go get them to give me money to go to Panama City or somewhere for spring break. So
Right.
it's like that's unbelievable like value that I wish
Hmm.
someone taught me back then. But then also for parents too, like for people who are older, if you're having kids, like thinking through those strategies to if you like to set yourselves up for success down the road and you like to travel, like there's really good strategies around there. There's an episode I did with the Points Mom that if you're first time listener, even you, Spencer, should go check out. It's
Hmm.
some of the strategies she has in place are crazy, but she
Yeah.
has it down to a T. She's been doing it since her kids were growing up and authorized users and just so many cool strategies. Or now her kids are, getting out of college. They're getting, approved for the platinum, for the gold, like
Hmm.
no great credit scores, everything. So I suggest anyone go check out Cindy Greenstein, the Points Mom episode, if you want to dive a little bit deeper into that. One other thing you said was around
Hmm.
Chase. You mentioned that some
Yep.
people online kind of disagree with you. I'm in the same boat as you. I
Hmm.
love it because I started out with, I mentioned the Capital One Venture, then got the Reserve, and then that's kind of been my go-to travel card. I love
Yep.
it. Then kind of moved into the Freedom, kind of backwards, but like you mentioned, that cash
Yeah.
back can be used, and that $0 APR or 0% interest rate is phenomenal if you have a big upcoming expense.
Hmm.
And then once you get into the business side too, being able to leverage those different business cards, the unlimited inks, like that's where I mean, yeah, I have multiple bonuses from that be like you mentioned, having
Hmm.
the reserve, the Sapphire Preferred, that helps you get into that. So I don't know if there's
Right.
anything specific you want to touch on or break down there, but I wanted to touch on that because I think that's one of a big misconception for a lot of people is when they see that cash back on a business card, when they see it on, the Freedom Unlimited,
Hmm.
any of those, right? They first just think it's cash back. So if you want to break that down a little bit, I think that'd
Yeah.
be helpful.
Yeah, so I kind of touched on it for a second with the Chase Freedom Unlimited, where I said that those are, they're branded as cashback cards. Like if you go look at Chase's website, the Freedom Unlimited, Freedom Flex, as well as like you said, the Ink Cash, Ink Unlimited on the business side, those are all branded as cashback cards. It says, the welcome offers will give you $200 cash back after $500 spent in 3 months. The Ink cards are much higher offers, but regardless, those cards are actually earning Chase Ultimate Rewards points. And what's powerful about that is that, like I said, with Chase, they're super flexible. So not only can you redeem those points for cashback at a full 1 cent per point, which is the cashback table minimum, really, because that means every 100 points is $1. And that's like the minimum we're redeeming for in general with transferable currency cards. But if you add a card like the Sapphire Preferred, the Sapphire Reserve, like Ross mentioned, that's another card that I have as well. And not a lot of people like it these days, apparently, but I've always loved it. Um, or on the business side, the Ink Preferred, or the Ink, or I guess the Sapphire Reserve for business now. I always forget about that being a new card. But you can then take those points, combine them onto those travel branded credit cards, and then transfer those points out to Chase's transfer partners. Like Hyatt is probably the most popular, I would say, for most people to transfer out to. Same thing with like Southwest, United, or the international airlines as well. But effectively, I think of those annual fee cards, basically any of the annual fee cards with Chase, as being the uh, the cards that unlock your ability to boost the value of your points. And in the past, they do have the points boost feature through the portal, which I really liked in the past. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. But they used to have the points boost feature that was like a guaranteed either 1.25 or 1.5 cents per point through the portal, which is like a 25% or 50% boost. They've recently done away with that in place of their points boost feature that now kind of limits you on what you can actually get boosts on. But bottom line, I think Chase's currency, the ultimate rewards points, which all of those Freedom cards, the Sapphire cards, the Ink cards, all of those earn ultimate rewards points. That's like the most flexible currency in this game. And that's why I like Chase a lot, especially for people that might not want to go super hard into this game.
Yeah. No, I agree. And just, I mean, a couple examples, because I think that's where people go, oh yeah, this is really cool. Like think of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I know we were talking about before we got on, you're big in the YouTube community. You work with a lot of different creators. For
Mm-hmm.
people who are just getting started out, if you're like, I'll use examples when I started this business, Itinerary Boss, like, I wanted a 0% interest card.
Yep.
For startup cost, my expenses weren't high. So I got that and planned out, okay, I know I'm going to have $6,000 in 3 months. Yeah, I'm going to pretty much upfront load that so I can get that
Mm-hmm.
100K welcome bonus. Same thing with a real estate property that we did. This is another strategy if you're a real estate investor, or you're just doing some sort of rehab. 0% interest is great. You get those welcome bonuses. Like that's 200K Chase points that we used on our honeymoon flights for over $11,000 worth of value in business
Mm-hmm.
class. So like that's where thinking through these things, and then just got another 90K offer on the unlimited
Yep.
ink for the business, that the cash, but having that reserve, being able to use that, like those are, and then going and we're going to utilize that for $1,300 a night Vail for 35,000 Chase points. Like
Yep.
that's where the value comes from. So just wanted to give
Absolutely.
those examples because I do think people see that cash back and they go, oh, I don't, that looks like cash back. So I appreciate you breaking that down. But the points boost side, I never really used it just because I
Yeah.
I value those points as I'm using it for business class flights, or if we're staying at a high end Hyatt, that's where I'm going to utilize those
Mm-hmm.
versus the portal. But there are now with the new edit and the credits, like it has become more appealing. But some of the edit hotels are just like, they're-
Yeah.
I have a lot of points, so it's hard to justify. But I had a friend who just got a welcome bonus on the reserve who I recommended, and she went to St. Lucia on her honeymoon and used
Mm-hmm.
the points boost feature for that. So they
Yeah.
liked it because they got all the credits. They saved, I think it was like 3 grand, and were able to get that. So
Yep.
yeah, it just kind of depends on your use case, right?
Absolutely. I think that's what's happened recently, especially in 2025, is that Chase, they've kind of been following the pipeline of Amex in a way with the luxury travel card, especially like with the Sapphire Reserve, where they're just kind of loading it with a ton of credits, raising the annual fee really high, that kind of stuff. But the key point in really this entire credit card game, and I'm sure we'll get into it here in a bit too, is just that I think it's so personal that it literally is completely dependent on your travel habits, your lifestyle, your spending habits, and nobody can really take that away from you. It's the same reason why I document my journey and still talk about Chase. Like because I do love them, even though people don't like that. Like I'm going to stick to that because it fits my travel like perfectly. So everything you just mentioned, like that trip that they took, is something that I would do and be really happy with my redemption, while others think it's maybe too restrictive or it's not worth it for them. And that's okay. Both people can be right at the same
Yeah.
time, you know?
No, I agree. I like what you say. It comes down to what's important to you. And, if you have 5 trips lined up and you're like, well, I'm not going to take this big, European or Asian trip or whatever. And it's
Hmm.
just, hey, I need to do this. Like, think about domestic trips. You can use those points for those things. And it's
Right.
saving you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. And you're still getting to go do what you want to do. So no,
Hmm.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's the biggest thing is even though on social media you're being hit with ads that are telling you that you're doing it wrong because you're not getting 50,000 points for business class, like just go back to think of what's best for you.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Cool, man. Well, what about like, so beyond entry level cards,
Hmm.
I know you mentioned like maybe getting the preferred, but once you kind of get that foundation in place, when do you think it makes sense to really start upgrading and going into, some of those annual fee cards?
Yeah, I think it really, I would say, first of all, depends on, I guess, again, how far you really want to take this game. So there's two different levels of this in my eyes, that you can kind of go down. The first one would be like somebody that just wants to keep it pretty simple and have like a, say like a max, like 5 credit card setup like that. They're good with that. Cover all their spending categories, put all their spend on those and travel, with as much as they can. On the other side, you have somebody like me and like the people that a lot of people in the space that I talk to, who will basically get an infinite amount of cards for those welcome offers that we've kind of touched on here and there. So, personally, I've I have like I think I've applied for like 21 cards at this point or gotten approved for like 21 cards at this point, and I'm 25 years old. Like that's not normal, but I've earned, 1.5 million points from welcome offers alone, and that's helped me travel in some really insane ways. So I guess the reason I bring that up now is because there really are like two different ways you can go into this. If you're on that first camp where you just want to keep it pretty simple, then I would say like kind of just upgrading, to those higher annual fee cards or applying for those higher annual fee cards like the Sapphire Reserve, Amex Platinum, Capital One Venture X, New City Strata Elite, like those types of cards are good. You kind of, I guess, like naturally, you're going to figure out where you're missing out on certain benefits that you want. Like if you want airport lounge access, you're not going to get that from a Chase Sapphire Preferred. If you want those higher end statuses, you're not going to get that without a high end hotel card, for example. So I think it comes kind of naturally over time. Like if you feel like you're just missing out on benefits and you're playing this travel game, but you're not seeing like a ton of those like small luxuries that you've been wanting, that's where those come into play for somebody that's playing the sign up bonus like hunting game, like I do, and it sounds like you do to a degree as well. Like those kind of come up really, I would say probably earlier on, just because you're going for any and every offer you can, with a plan in place, obviously. But I think you're a little bit maybe more lenient on when you start applying for those. However, I will say, like I applied for so I did that path I kind of mentioned. I got the Freedom Unlimited, then the Sapphire Preferred. Then I got a couple other cards that I was kind of just testing out, like the Amex Gold, City Custom Cash, like all these other ones. And I eventually upgraded to the Sapphire Reserve, I think like 2 years after I initially applied for the Preferred. And that's whenever I started traveling enough to really justify the credits on it, the benefits on it, and stuff like that. Like I wasn't going to waste my money beforehand paying, at that time it was $550 a year. Now that card's 795. I just didn't see a reason for me to be paying for that because I wasn't going to pay for the benefits out of pocket as is. Once you start paying for those benefits out of pocket as is, and like I said, your lifestyle kind of starts to reflect what those cards offer, then it's like, well, yeah, I might as well get the credit back for it. I'll front load the annual fee, get all the benefits back, and now my effective annual fee is way lower. Um, but yeah, I guess that's kind of like my journey with the premium cards. And now that I'm in the sign up bonus hunting game, those are the cards with the highest offers on them as
Yeah.
well. So if I see one that has an elevated offer on it, it's likely that I'll consider applying for it for that purpose alone.
Yeah, no, that's a great breakdown. Do for annual fees, I mean, I
Mhm.
think I go through and I look at it and say, well, how am I going to use this credit? Like, for
Yeah.
example, the reserve, when they came out with the elevated annual fee, I was just getting text from, oh my gosh, they raised the annual fee this. And I just went down the list. I'm like, well, I use all these things and now I
Right.
can just use it to make my life easier, cover those costs. And right off the rip, you get that $300 travel
Hmm.
credit that's simple. So you're only looking at, right, the 495. So
Yep.
that's, I think it's just looking, because everyone always asks about annual fees. And there, I've done a whole episode on that, and we can go, we can go down a
Yeah,
full rabbit
that's
hole there. But I think it's just looking at how are you going to use the credits? Are you going to, is it worth keeping up
yeah.
with those, like you mentioned? I'm curious
That's
from, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's one of like the biggest topics that I cover on my channel, to be honest. When you talk about like the simplicity and how to make this credit card game easier, I think the topic of effective annual fees is probably the biggest key when it comes to premium cards. And what I mean by that is your effective annual fee is the total annual fee that you're paying on a card minus the total value you get on an annual basis. And the tricky part is that that total value on an annual basis is very subjective, and you have to be honest with yourself. I've talked to a lot of people on consulting calls and stuff like that that have convinced themselves that a card like the Amex Platinum is going to easily give them positive value. Like, of course, I could use a Lululemon credit. Of course, I can use all that. But it's like, if you're not paying for that beforehand,
Yeah.
then you're actually falling trap to what the banks want you to do. So I think being honest with yourself in those calculations is really key if you're trying to keep it lean.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. And if you want to
Yeah.
dive deeper into the annual fee stuff, like Spencer mentioned, he covers a lot of that on his YouTube channel. So go check that out. That's
Mhm.
great to know, and I appreciate you plugging that. What about card diversification? So like
Yeah.
a lot of people, I have a lot of friends, I'll talk to them and they'll say, "Oh, I'm only Amex. Like I only like Amex,
Mhm.
or I only like I have Amex, Capital One, Chase. I start out with Chase." But I think when you start out, you want everything in some people just want everything in one bank. It's like, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on diversification? I kind of know the cons, right? What most
Right.
people think, but what are some of the pros and how you think about it?
Yeah, I think again it comes down to that like kind of dividing into two different parties here. Like if you're somebody that only wants a few cards, then having one ecosystem that you're mainly earning in makes a lot of sense. You don't want to spread your spend necessarily too thin. Like that's one of the cons you're thinking of, I'm sure. However, if you're going to be okay with playing this game to its fullest potential, getting the welcome offers, doing this whole thing, you're going to run out of cards pretty quick in just one ecosystem, at least cards that you should be applying for, I guess. And the way I think about diversification is that it can actually be a really powerful thing and isn't as scary as people make it out to be. And the sole reason for that is because if you're in the travel game, you're transferring to all these transfer partners. If you go look at Chase, Capital One, Amex, Citi, they have each of them probably have like six at least overlapping partners among the four of them. And what that means is that if you are traveling in these international business class flights, if you're flying with Air Canada, Air France, KLM, Flying Blue, these companies that are overlapping with every issuer, well, you're effectively earning the same points currency no matter what you're spending in either Chase, Amex, Capital One, City because you can transfer to that mutual airline. So depending on your travel habits, again, it might make sense to actually be diversified because that diversification actually isn't much diversity at all, depending on who you're transferring to. But I think where it becomes a problem is where people, like you mentioned, they go really early on, they'll go really hard, get a cards from a bunch of different issuers, and now they have 50,000 points here, 25 here, 100 here, and they're not transferring to those international airlines. Well, now you're kind of stuck and you have no
Yeah.
way to use those points effectively. So yeah, again, like get your goals in place first, figure out where you're traveling, how you want to use your points, and see if basically just make sure you can actually use the points with the partners you want to, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And yeah, I mean, there's so many tools now. I feel like when I started trying to learn this 10 years ago, like there weren't as many tools to use to
Yeah.
find. Now we had card pointers come
Hmm.
on for tracking some of those credits. So if you're looking to learn something like that, that's a really good app that I use. And when you're just getting started out, that can really help along with a
Hmm.
word wallet who will be coming on. So those are two tools that are just very simple, very low cost. So check those out. But yeah, man, I agree. It's always just getting that foundation in
Hmm.
place and just starting out. That's the biggest thing. What do you
Yeah.
feel like? So cashback versus points. I know we're predominantly I've obviously lean, and I know you do too, because we're in the
Hmm.
credit card, travel game. But how do you break down? Because a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm getting cash back." Like, how do you kind of look at that for people when you're talking to them?
Yeah, it's funny. I think over the past year, once again, one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that I think a hybrid setup for a lot of folks actually kind of is like king. I think it's kind of best to have a mixture of cashback and travel because that gives you the most flexibility. And that's actually, that's exactly why I mentioned that I like Chase because you can do that all within one ecosystem. The same thing applies with Citi and Wells Fargo from the big lenders is, they can transfer out or they can be cashback. Um, However, I would just say that, yeah, I think some people don't have the optionality since they're not going to be playing the welcome offer hunting game. to spend on cashback cards and sacrifice those points if they just want to travel with their points, because then they might need to put all their spend on travel cards to make that possible. If you're at that point where you actually maybe do have a surplus of points, or you're just changing your habits, like you're not traveling that much this year. Well, it'd be really nice to be able to lean on cashback cards and, for a full year, actually get some value from your points. So I think, yeah, having a mixture is good, and how much of a mixture you have, whether you lean more travel or cashback, really depends on, I guess, your current goals as well as how much you're traveling. Because, yeah, like I said, some people just need a ton of points to just supplement the travel they're doing, while others are completely happy with cashback. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having a full cashback setup. Less people in that space watch, I guess, like our content, just because we are like, that's what the points and miles game is kind of all about, using them for travel. But it's a very viable strategy if that's just fits your needs.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's easy. And I like how you
Yeah.
broke down that example of if you're not traveling that much this year, you might switch to a simple cash back. Say a
Yep.
lot of people, who might be in that transition of they're starting to have kids. They might not have travel on the horizon for a year or two,
Yep.
like big travel. So it might make sense then to stack cash and then, right, save that up, and then move back to that card if you already have it. So I,
Hmm.
I like that breakdown. Yeah, I've thought about with a new Bitcoin card. That's kind of
Hmm.
the only cashback card I've really looked into.
Yeah, I'll say that a super underrated one for in that category is actually not even a credit card at all, but the PayPal debit card. Have you looked into this one yet?
No, I've just been
It's
getting hit with pop-ups when I go into Venmo.
Oh, so yeah, so the PayPal debit card it's a 5% back on your highest spend category every month, up to $1,000 spent. And that includes like grocery, fuel, I think dining, apparel, and something else. But where it really comes in clutch is at Costco. I don't know however many people you talk to shop at Costco, but
Everyone.
exactly. So it's like most people don't have a card that covers them at more than 2x back. Costco already doesn't accept MasterCard, so that knocks out a ton of card. They don't
Yeah.
accept Amex, so that knocks out the Amex Gold. The PayPal debit is a debit card, so it doesn't abide by the same rules as a credit card does with Costco, meaning you can use it at Costco, even though it's a MasterCard, and you get 5% back on your grocery store purchases if that's what you select. Like I said, up to $1,000 a month. And that's a way that I've kind of implemented a hybrid approach in my setup, is I use that PayPal debit for that and that alone. And yeah, I've gotten a
That's
lot of cash back this year because of that.
that's smart. I never thought about that. What about how does that because a lot of people like my parents and most people who shop at Costco have that Costco card. I've never looked into it just because I have the Venture X and I'm good with getting
Mhm.
2X on everything. But
Yeah.
have you done the math or done a video where you kind of break that down between the two?
Yeah, not with the Costco card specifically. I mean, off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure that the Costco card actually only gives you 2% back in store as is. Where that
Okay.
Costco card really is powerful, I think, is the gas station purchases, because it gives you like 5% back at Costco gas, I think, 4 or 5%. But yeah, when it comes to just straight cash back, in my opinion, you can't beat the PayPal debit. I mean, you can't beat 5% cash back on
Yeah.
groceries in general, aside from, I guess, the Amex Blue Cash Preferred, which again is not going to be accepted at Costco.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I kind of have like a balance in my brain between like 3x points and miles is equal to 5% cash back if you're redeeming your points for an average 1.5 cents per point. Obviously, like you've been talking about, that's not what you're doing. You're redeeming for international business class flights that might be 3 to 5 cents per point on average. That changes the math. But
Yeah.
if everybody does that math for themselves based on their travel habits, it
Yeah.
becomes pretty clear what they should choose.
Yeah, and most people probably aren't going to redeem at that level, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's no, that's an interesting strategy.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've never looked in the Costco card because I'm not waiting
Yeah,
15, 20 minutes to get gas to spave, $2. I'm good on
I
that.
wouldn't do it. But
Yeah.
yeah, again, that PayPal debit doesn't impact your credit report. It's a debit card. It just connects to your PayPal account. You can have auto reload set up, so it's just always
And
like a
then
credit card paying itself off every time.
and then
Like,
you're paying cash, so you're paying through that debit card that's linked
yeah.
to your debit account. So like if you're banking at Chase with your checking account, you'd ultimately, if you had $1,000 and you spent
Mhm.
400 at Costco, you'd be that 400 would come out of your checking account, but you'd get 5% cash back from that card, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
So I have auto reload set up. So it's like $300 or whatever is in my PayPal balance. If it ever dips below that, it pulls from my SoFi checking directly to the PayPal account. A
cool.
small hack for anybody that wants to do this strategy is make sure you link it to a debit card, because if you link it directly to the bank account, it might take like an extra day for the transfer to happen. So just that's just like a really small thing. But yeah, it literally operates completely on its own. constantly giving me 5% cash back that I then redeem back into the PayPal account. So
Yeah.
effectively, I'm getting a 5% discount on all my Costco
There you
purchases.
go. I love
Yeah.
it. Learn
Yeah.
learn something new every day. That's
Yeah.
that's awesome, man. I'm
Hmm.
very cool. What I talk about mistakes and failures from
Hmm.
people when they're starting to get into this points and miles game. Like I mentioned on the front end, my first Capital One welcome bonus was used as a statement credit at one
Yeah.
cent per point, right? I redeemed through the portal for everyone goes through it
Hmm.
when you're first getting started out. But are there other specific mistakes that you see just kind of outside of that statement credit, only portal bookings, things like that?
Yeah, I think we touched on it a little bit already. Of just like going too hard, too quick is kind of like the main one that I see in my like I guess YouTube space, just because people get really gung ho on this stuff. Like when you see somebody like myself, who's like I said, I've earned 1.5 million points from welcome offers at 25 years old. You want to replicate that
Yeah.
as quickly as possible, but that's actually not the sustainable approach. I think having like a really good plan in place is the most important thing you can do. So like credit card road mapping is like a massive part of my channel as well. I think that's kind of what has brought me to like the stage I'm at where people like to talk to me about that specific side of things, and those videos seem to do pretty well for me because I think I'm very calculated with this stuff and a lot of people aren't. And that's one of the biggest mistakes is that they see that offer, they go get it, then they redeem it for cash back or through the portal, like you said, and they go get another one and they just don't feel like they're making much progress. And that's because, you're not taking the time beforehand to prepare.
Yeah.
Um, so I see that one as well as I think a really weird one is that this credit card hobby, can actually become like an addiction to a point where people are just um, applying because they want to, or they're getting like married to their cards and they don't have like any reason to keep holding them, especially the high annual fee ones, but they'll keep them for years because it served them well at one point. They're just like this really weird psychology that goes into this where you can kind of become addicted to it. And I think just being completely honest with yourself and those effective annual fee calculations, reanalyzing consistently, that's really important to make sure you're not falling behind. And like I said earlier, like actually making the bank win this transaction. The only way that we're able to win this game is because other people are losing. So I don't want anybody watching this to be one of those losers, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's why I wanted to bring you on the show because you bring
Yeah.
right. You know this game inside and out. And I love what you said because I think problem number two doesn't happen if you solve problem number one
Yes.
and you do that credit card road mapping. Yeah, that's something that I personally sit down every year and do. And I go,
Hmm.
what's Q1 look like? What, at the beginning of the year, I know I have a big property tax bill for
Yep.
some land that I own. So it's like I know that I'm going to have to spend what these cards have, and there's some really good ones that I'm just mapping out. Venture X has a good one. There's,
Hmm.
the Atmos, which I wish it went back up to 100K, but
Yeah.
and then some of the new American cards, right? Like we live in a Charlotte hub, so I think it's always going back to like who just starting
Hmm.
out easy of who's the airline that's in your hub? What part of the alliance are they? So for me, I look at American and Alaska points very
Yeah.
valuable because if I can get a welcome bonus on that, that covers probably all my flights or a business class flight for next year's trips. And I think it's aligning to a process that I do is, I mean, our travel is planned out until probably next October of next year.
Yeah.
So like each year you're just having those conversations. So I think it's, if you're single, it's a little bit easier, but two, if you
Yeah.
have a significant other, spouse, family, it's just like sitting down and road mapping that. And that's going to align with, your strategy. If you are chasing welcome bonuses or if you're, just trying to have a few cards, but understanding where are you going? Because too, like if one other thing is if you're a parent and you're traveling for sports, like you may not be taking these massive trips, but you got travel baseball, travel basketball, things like that. Like those hotel nights, that's where
Hmm.
this can offset those type of expenses because you're probably gonna have to shell out $400 for a metal, right? Little league bat. So save
Yeah.
here on those type of things. I'm curious, welcome offers because you
Hmm.
said right 21 before you're 25.
Yeah.
How do you know, obviously you're paying down your balances, that's the
Yeah.
first thing, but how do you know how to structure those, right? Is it every 30 days? Is it every 60? Like, because I think people get overwhelmed with that piece. So would love
Hmm.
to hear kind of your perspective or from your research, like what is the best way to do that?
Yeah. I think the simplest way to answer that would be that I'm almost always spending towards a welcome offer. Um, So the way that welcome offers are structured is usually you have to spend a certain amount, say $4,000 in a certain amount of time, either 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is. So the way that I kind of structure my since I don't have like super high spend, the way that I structure my applications is almost on like that 3 month cadence because I'm always spending up until the third month to hit the previous welcome offer, and then I go get a new card and apply for, and spend towards that welcome offer. So that's like the simple way to explain it. I think there's a lot of caveats to that. So obviously, if you have higher spend, you're going to be working through those cards a lot quicker, and that's very doable. You could either get more cards or just spend towards higher welcome offer requirement cards, like the business side specifically is where those higher spending requirements come into play. Or if, like you mentioned, if you're road mapping properly, you'll know that, okay, in April, I have a massive tax bill for my business. Well, I need to go look for some cards to cover that. And that's what I did this past year. And I applied for 3 cards in one day, which I'd never done before. Like that, most people, you shouldn't really be doing that necessarily. But I had like a perfect plan in place in my eyes that would allow me to earn the maximum amount of rewards for, I think it was like $20,000 worth of tax bills or something that I had. And luckily I got approved for all three and was able to earn, I think it was like 5,000 plus dollars worth of points just from that $20,000 expense, which if you're doing that consistently, I mean, you're seeing some really high returns on all of your spend. So it's definitely it depends on your spend and how high it is. But I would say that for most people, that 3 month cadence seems to be pretty safe. And I can kind of back that up by just my experience of being I got denied for my first card on my 21st application. So up until that point, I had not ever been denied, not even been sent to pending review, and I had that typical cadence of every 3 months with sometimes an occasional extra one thrown in, depending on my spending. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I've done it.
Yeah, I've been denied once and it was over the weekend.
Yeah.
Because
Oh, well,
yeah.
really?
Yeah, well, yeah, because I've opened a couple business cards recently, just had to, one for real estate
Hmm.
property for water damage, so I had a big expense there, and then just
Yeah.
one for the business, and then one other personal, but I think I was spacing those out probably every one was 30, I think one was 30 or 45, and then I think
Hmm.
one was 45, maybe 30. So it could have been that, but
Yeah. There's also, I guess, on that road mapping topic, there are a bunch of rules with these lenders that you have to keep in mind, right? Like Chase has their infamous like 524 rule, which
yeah.
restricts how many cards you can get approved for in 24 months. The business side of things really opens up the floodgates, though. I
Yeah.
would not be able to do what I did, what I just talked about, without applying for business cards.
Yeah.
And that's maybe a topic for another time. But, business cards are open to anybody. It's not just people that own big businesses or anything like that. Like these are for anybody to get. So
Yeah.
um, that's an important guess caveat as well is those play a massive role.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the thing where a lot of people miss out on. And I talk to
Hmm.
so many people who their businesses might only be spending 1,000, 2,000, sometimes three in a month. And like, oh, I don't have big enough spend. And it's like, if you're just starting your business, go get a one that you can get a very, even if you're spending $500,000, 500 or $1,000 each month, like there's still opportunities to get welcome offers and build up that business credit and build up, right, get that welcome offer. So I think that's a
Hmm.
huge mistake I see. And I know we were talking
Yep.
about it before, but it's just like if you're just getting started, you're thinking about scaling, get started now so you can start to build that up. If you need
Hmm.
some startup costs, like we mentioned, 0% interest cards, like that's definitely a mistake on the business side, like you mentioned. That's where the floodgates open because
Yeah.
then you combine personal spend with business spend plus welcome offers. Plus, if you're like Spencer and I and you want more welcome offers, right? You're just kind of
Yeah.
hitting it at four different angles and it just, right, it makes it a lot of fun.
Hmm. And people take this a lot further than we do. I
Oh,
can promise you that.
yeah.
Like this, what I'm talking about sounds crazy to a lot of folks, but you're just scratching the surface. So yeah, there's some more hidden tactics that I don't even cover on the public channel because you're not supposed to be doing them. But I've talked to people privately that do some crazy stuff. So the world is your
Yeah.
oyster with this stuff.
Yeah. And someone was talking to me about that at a conference I was at, and I was just like
Yeah.
mind blown about it. And I was
I
like,
value
yeah.
my relationship too much with the banks to be risking what a lot of people do, but
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, there was one guy that I talked to who was like, "Yeah, I got burned," and
yeah,
I try to tell some of these people that, but yeah, it's
absolutely.
one path I won't go down. Are there any redemptions you've done? That I know you went to Italy
Mhm.
when we first got connected. Any other big redemptions where you stretch your points really far for hotels, flights?
Yeah, I think the Italy one's probably the best example. That was still a really high cost like trip in general, just because like high points cost, I should say. So it's not like something you're doing every day, but we did business class flights there and back. You know, on the way there, we were just Air France business from Austin to Rome, and then on the way back, we did the Emirates business class in the A380s with the bar in the back and all that, which was really cool for us to get to experience, me and my girlfriend. And I mean, those flights alone, just to get there and back, I think was like 200,000 points combined each person. So, or sorry, individually each person 200,000, so 400 combined, which is a lot of points, and not a lot of people have that. But it's where the welcome offers help out a lot. And then we also stayed in hotels the whole entire time. So I think in total that trip would have cost, I think it was $19,000 in cash, and we used, including Marriott points, which are a lower point valuation, we used like 800,000 points for that trip, which is crazy. But that's maybe not a good example for like the someone else that's just wanting to get started in this. I did a similar thing in Croatia last year where I flew business class by myself there and back, and it was only 120,000 points. And that's lay flat seat and everything. Like it's just a really good experience. And now I'm too spoiled. Like I have to keep earning these points because I don't want to fly economy now overseas.
Yeah.
Um, and then, yeah, I only stayed a couple of nights in hotels there. So that made the trip a lot cheaper. Like I think I spent under 200,000 total points for that, business class trip to Croatia for a week or whatever it was, 10 days or something like that. But I think the highest value that I get for the lowest amount of cost has to just be these short domestic trips, as I'm sure you've taken yourself, Ross. It's just like, I'll go book a trip to Atlanta for a concert for me and my girlfriend for like 2 nights, and I'll get 3 cents per point at some random Hyatt that I never expected to. The trip, the flight itself was 5,000 points each way per person. Like those can be really great value, and I think that's how most people are traveling in general that watch or that are into this credit card game, and that's why I try to shine more light on those in my videos than just the international because I mainly fly domestic economy
Yeah,
personally.
100%. Same. I mean,
Yeah,
I used to travel. I was a road warrior, so I traveled and I had status. I, we make fun of me because my wife now travels for work and she is, sitting way in front. I'm walking to the
yeah,
back and I have the travel company, right? So
yeah, yeah,
we're always laughing at, it. But no, I agree. And that's what I think people don't realize is those Chase, those Amex, those Capital One, those
hmm
City points, those can be used on those domestic. We fly economy, right? Like
yes, yeah,
economy because yeah, and then you can use some of those points to stay in hotels and make those weekend trips or do those trips. I think that's where a lot of people, will blow 5, 10 grand to go to Disneyland or Myrtle Beach, and right, they're paying out of
yeah,
pocket when they could be doing some really, really cool trips. And something that you mentioned too, the Marriott stay. If you have Marriott points, because a lot of business travelers do, like
yes,
don't
yeah,
hoard those. I talked to so many people when I was in my medical advice days. People traveled for 30 years and they hoarded those. They're like, I'm saving it for my retirement. They have 2, 3 million Marriott points. I'm like, those are devaluing at such a fast rate. Like,
yeah,
go burn them and go right, go
exactly.
spend them. Don't worry about that because you're getting those for free
Yes.
through work travel. So now I think again, it just comes down to like we've said throughout this whole conversation, what's the foundation, what's important to
hmm
your specific use case, and then leverage what you're already spending to then go do what you want to do, whether that's fly international business, which you'll be spoiled and you'll never really want to fly
Yeah,
economy again, but it's
yeah,
worth it. Or right, or just those couple domestic trips, just wherever you're going, holidays, not having to pay 500 out of pocket. So
hmm
there's a lot of strategies where it really makes it simple. And again, it goes back to what's most important to you. I guess lastly, if there's one
hmm
piece of advice, I know we've covered a ton of things, but what would you say those two action points, if someone wanted to get started today, um, what would you say those two action steps would be?
Yeah, I think first would be get a handle on your overall finances in general. So like figure out what you're spending, first of all, create a budget if you need to. Make sure all of that is already being tracked because then it makes your credit card game a lot simpler. So going back to like I guess what we were talking about earlier, it's just you have to have a good plan in place and you don't get that good plan without understanding what you're already spending, what your current habits are. So I think that's step one. And then if you've already done that, you have a pretty good handle on things. You can start to match cards if you're very early on, start to match cards to those earning categories and the benefits that you need covered. If you're past that, though, I think then you get to go to that next level where it's like, okay, how do I optimize this now? How do I use my points for the highest value? Whether that be the international flights, using tools like Seats.aero, all these different things to find the best award availability. Or maybe optimizing for you means just using them on these domestic trips that you otherwise would pay cash for. Um, learning how to do that as well as just earning more points at that point. Like that's going to be the final iteration is like, well, now I know how to make this all work, but I don't have enough points to do everything I want to. So then how do I do that part of it? And that's what I hope, you know, these conversations in my channel and your podcast, everything can really help folks learn is that final stage, especially, but as well, like all the steps throughout the way, you know?
Yeah. No, very, very well said and great place to end. Well, hey, man, I really appreciate you coming on. This was great. I know that our listeners and audience is going to find this extremely valuable. If I know we've mentioned your YouTube channel,
Mm-hmm.
where can our listeners find you online?
Yeah, so YouTube is going to be my main platform. I do, you know, my email is also attached to that YouTube channel and my about page if you have any specific questions, or if you just want to reach out and find more out about me. But I also have an Instagram page. It's just Spencer Johnson Official, so same handle as the YouTube if you ever want to DM or check things out there. But yeah, all my content is really hosted on YouTube, and I have links in my description where you can find everything else out about me, my consulting stuff, the product, all that kind of stuff is all in the description of those videos.
Awesome. Yeah. And you mentioned, I know we promised our listeners on the front
Yeah.
if they hung around till the end, you just launched a blueprint product. You mind just sharing a little bit what that's about and why you created that?
Yeah. So going back to the roadmap thing, right? Like that's been kind of my like shtick throughout this time. It's just like really having a plan in place. And I've been using this like super manual spreadsheet for a long time in Google Sheets. And I've had thousands of people just download the template. And it's really, there's nothing really to it. It was just like a blank template with a couple of formulas in it. But over the past couple of years, I've just seen my needs like surpass what I had there in that free template. So I partnered with another creator in this space that is just like an Excel aficionado, at least compared to me. And we built out what we call the credit card blueprint, which is a multi-sheet thing where you kind of start with a card manager, enter all the cards you have. You can calculate your effective annual fees there, see the total amount of points you're going to earn in a year based on your spending that you enter into the sheet, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of the hub. Then we have a separate tab for road mapping where we can help you recommend or help recommend you cards based on the inputs that you give us. So like what currencies you want to earn in, what spending categories you need covered, all that. That leads into a cent per point calculator, a couple of tabs that will help you make sure you're getting the maximum amount of value for your points based on the different options you have, whether that be booking in cash, travel portals, or transfer partners. And then finally, we have like a transfer partner tab, which is like a massive table that will you can filter based on the cards you have in your setup and just see what your options are. So it's kind of this full thing that flows all the way throughout. And the hope is that it is like a one-stop shop for folks that like the Excel side of things. But I also personally use that in combination with apps like card pointers. I personally use Max Rewards, but it's the same idea
Yeah.
both ways. And yeah, it's just a tool to hopefully help people streamline their setups and get the most out of this game. So
Dang,
that's what it is.
I might buy it.
Yeah,
I've been,
it's fun if you
I
like this
do,
stuff.
yeah, 100%. I mean, I use a Google Sheet and then I use Google Docs, right, and have right, and I
Yeah.
have all of those things, but that just makes it where it's streamlined. So no, I
Hmm.
think for someone who does this, I'll say that is super valuable. And if
Hmm.
you're right, I wish that I knew about this 10 plus years ago. So if you're listening, highly suggest going and checking that out. You can find Spencer, like he mentioned on his YouTube channel and all his links there. Really, again, appreciate you coming on. This was very valuable. If you're a first time listener, make sure you give us a follow or subscribe. That way you don't miss out on any weekly episodes that we put out with expert guests like Spencer. If you think he did a good job, I do. Make sure you give him a 5-star review. That helps us keep bringing great guests like him onto the show. And make sure you share it with a family or friend who wants to travel on points and miles more. But we will see everyone next week. And thanks again, Spencer, for coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having me.